Welcome back to the Chronicles of the King podcast, where we take a deep dive into the life and legacy of Elvis Presley. I'm Megan.
And I'm Tessa, and we are two 20-something Elvis fans dedicated to keeping his legacy alive with a research-based approach.
Whether you're a diehard Elvis fan or simply curious about a man who changed the course of music and culture, you're in the right place.
We are here to unpack the myths, explore the music, and get to the heart of Elvis's enduring impact.
Every other week, we'll bring you research, untold stories, and fresh perspectives on Elvis's journey. From his humble beginnings to his legendary performances, we're here to shed light on it all.
So settle in for a podcast made with a lot of TLC for the man himself, one story at a time.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of the King podcast. We are still reviewing our movies. We're doing 4 each week. And this week we are covering Fun in Acapulco, Kissin Cousins, Viva Las Vegas, and Roustabout. Okay, so Tessa, you want to start us off with the first one?
Yeah, so a lot of these I hadn't seen, as in I hadn't seen any of them except for Viva Las Vegas. So I had experience, to say the least, because I feel like we're starting to get to the point where it's like, oh God, these are not very good. So the first one that we're looking at is Fun in Acapulco, which came out November 27th, 1963. It was directed by Richard Thorpe, produced and distributed by Hal Wallace Productions, classic, and Paramount Pictures. And the cast includes Ursula Andress, Elsa Cardenas, Paul Lucas, and Larry Damascene.
Ooh, fancy there. And then the logline we have for this movie is a trapeze artist tries to use love to conquer his fear of heights. It's such an odd plot.
Okay, his name is Mike again in this movie.
Mike. I think we need to start a tally of how many times his character's name is Mike, though.
So many.
Too many times.
I can't keep on.
Can I speak my truth real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Other than the 4 movies from the 50s, I can remember his character's names. The movies of the 60s, I do not. Because at some point, they all just kind of blend together. And I feel like we were really experiencing that this week. Mm-hmm. So they were all just be like, you know what, I really don't remember that plot point. Even Tessa, who had just finished watching Fun in Acapulco for the first time this week, she was like, I don't remember that being in the plot. And I'm like,
I was like, he was a trapeze artist. I don't remember.
I feel like,
yeah, I don't remember. So,
but he is.
Okay. And so Mike Wingren arrives in Acapulco seeking a fresh start, and he had a tragic accident that left him emotionally scarred. And then there's this kid, Raul, who also, why do they all speak English to each other, even though they're in Mexico? Okay, I'm just checking that. We just wanted everyone to be aware of that. And Raul heard Mike, guess what? Heard him sing. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, you know what? I'll be your manager and I'll get you a job, even though he's a child. I guess there's no laws at all in Mexico. That's the vibe I was understanding from this movie was trying to portray.
Kind of. So Raul, he gets Mike this job in this luxurious hotel. There's several girlies there, of course. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not an Elvis movie without some girls. Including Margarita, who is played by Ursula Andress. And she's the love interest of this movie, but he also has met this other woman who's a female bullfighter, Dolores. She doesn't play a whole big thing in the plot. I don't know why she was introduced, but just to throw another girl into the mix.
Yeah. And then it's not an Elvis movie if there isn't a love triangle or square or
octagon.
Whatever. I mean, I know, sorry, I didn't mean to get geometric on you. So there's competition for Margarita's affections with a suave, a hotel lifeguard named Moreno, who's played by Alejandro Rey. And then Mike, so the Elvis character, is roped somehow into performing this acrobatic stunt, and he has to confront his fear of heights. He's afraid of heights because when he was a trapeze artist, we learned he has this PTSD. I forgot. He dropped his partner, womp womp,
and he died.
So then he's afraid of heights. But don't worry, love is going to sort it out. His love for
As it always
Margarita.
does. But then ends with the song, Hooray, as it usually does. There's no more drama and conquers his fears, just like Tessa said, and everybody kind of just rides off into the sunset.
He conquered his PTSD, his trauma is no more because he found a lovely lady. He jumped off a cliff and was like, not afraid of heights anymore.
I got this.
Also,
yep.
While I was watching it, take a shot every single time they say the word amigo gratuitously.
Did you really?
No, I'm just saying that
if we're going to play this game, okay.
If I were to have done that, I would have been drunk in 2 minutes because
there's a lot of amigos and senoritas as well.
Yeah, it's just like the only reason they're in the movie is to make it like it's in Mexico. Like there's no reason for them like other than that. So I guess
other places that they could have filmed this movie, but
it could have been California, and they just like
could have been Arizona. There's lots of Elvis girlies out there. Yep.
Yes.
Anyway, so some themes.
I thought it was a little progressive that we were dealing with like PTSD as a theme. Just kind of like, okay, but then it's also in the same vein, like a little dumb. Because because his trauma is related to a trapeze accident, which
like so many other things we could have picked.
That's just
they played off like the military thing. I feel like again, something that could have worked, but no, they chose trapeze artists. But I guess that kind of like lends itself to our overcoming fears and trauma / PTSD kind of theme. He did conquer his fears, gets the girl, whatever.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Another theme is obviously love, as per every
always
Elvis movie ever. And then Mike is thinking like, ugh, am I worthy of love? I had a traumatic incident and I killed my trapeze partner. But then he's being all vulnerable. And then don't worry, he is worthy of love. Reinvent yourself in Mexico.
Whoa. That's the life lesson we learned from this movie.
In Acapulco.
And then we also learned about escaping the past and, starting fresh. Because that's what you do in Mexico, apparently, at least if you're Elvis. So,
and drink a lot of margaritas. And then get a girl
named Margarita. So
works perfectly.
And I feel like as we go through these, the plots are going to become less and less and less. And I will say for this episode, we have begun to start taking out like the Elvis kind of character.
What's the character?
There's not a big difference, which we'll kind of get into in this next section. We're talking about like behind the scenes. You want to take this one away?
Sure. So
a long one.
It's a little longer one, but it's from the book Elvis and Memphis Mafia by Alana Nash. And Elvis's cousin, Billy Smith, says, and I quote, about 63, I think, it's when Elvis started realizing that the movies weren't ever going to get much better. He called them his travelogues. The story almost always stayed the same. Boy and girl, romance, trouble, lots of songs, happy editing. Only Fun in Acapulco was maybe a little more forgettable than some of the others. Hell, most of them after Wild in the Country are pretty forgettable. He did Fun in Acapulco with Ursula Andress. She scared him a little, I think. She wasn't his kind of woman because she was a petite and she wasn't dark-haired. But Alan Fortas, who was another member of the Memphis Mafia, Alan had the hots for her. He always liked blondes, but Elvis was more fascinated by her than anything. She had those big shoulders, He was laughing about it one day. He said, I was embarrassed to take off her damn shirt next to her. But they flirted with each other. She was married to John Derrick, but she used to call Graceland a lot. She wouldn't ask for Elvis because she knew Priscilla was there, so she'd ask for Alan. And then the secretaries would tell Alan that Ursula called, and Alan would call her back, and Elvis would get on the phone. So
that was, I feel like, the only upside to these films that was the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. Like, I mean, yeah, fun in a way to hear some of the stories, I guess.
Yeah, but I feel like, again, that's all that they were. It was like Billy said that they were his travelogues, same plot, just different girl, different location.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said we kind of like started taking out kind of the characteristics a little bit, because we're not going to restate the same characteristics for each of the 4 films.
No, and his acting chops are like not put to the test, like how any of these movies. Like,
I was thinking about one specific scene from Fun in Acapulco. It's like where he's on like, and hopefully you remember this part of the film. Maybe you don't, because it's about the trapeze thing. It's where like he's on like the high dive and he's like looking down and all he remembers is like that flashback.
oh yes, I do.
And it's like kind of something like that. I'm like, he didn't really give him a whole lot to work with. And so it was just kind of like a weird reaction. It wasn't any kind of dramatic role for him. But anyhow, that's what we're going to get into. Another side note was these films, Priscilla actually started coming on the set every so often. So this one, she did come to set and kind of, hung out while they were filming. But let's move on to some reactions, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Oh, I thought you were going. So the New York Times on February 20th, 1964 said, so this was a positive review, which I thought was a little interesting. It said, compared with the Beatles, Elvis Presley sounds like Caruso's famous opera singer in Fun in Acapulco, which opened yesterday in neighborhood theaters. And he certainly looks better. In fact, this attractive travel poster for the famed Mexican resort is far and away his best musical feature to date. Okay. I beg to differ, but okay.
No, maybe, I don't know. Was he paid to write that? Not to be a hater on this movie, but it's definitely not peak Elvis movie.
No, and like what songs other than like Bossa Nova, maybe? Like,
I mean, this one did have like a full length LP, but there's nothing I feel like memorable except for Bossa Nova. But this same article goes on to say, it's a pleasant, idyllic movie that ever takes itself seriously and moves briskly under Richard Thorpe's direction. The excellent color photography and the balmy atmosphere of the resort, the luxury hotels, the beaches, and the quaint byways were positively eye-popping, which is more about...
Girl, it's like, it's a backdrop. Like, it's not...
I think some of it was filmed in Acapulco. Obviously, some, like, a little bit of a tidbit. Like, Elvis did not film in Acapulco for political governmental reasons.
Yeah, so there was like this rumor that he had made a derogatory comment about Mexico or Mexican people, and like said he would never go there. And then Megan saw something that the government like deigned him as like,
what was it?
Persona non grata. Yeah. It's like he wasn't allowed into the country.
No. So they had like a stunt double for Elvis for the scenes that they did film there, according to what I've been reading. So I think some of it was, but probably a big portion of it was just a backdrop.
Yeah. And then the Variety magazine writes about about Fun in Acapulco and says, Presley fans won't be disappointed. He sings 10 serviceable songs and wiggles a bit to boot. However, the ground covered by the plot doesn't help to increase his star stature. And for those who are not devotees, the main attraction may turn out to be the technicolor scenery of Acapulco. So
I think people were more interested in the way it was shot and the prettiness of it versus like
the plot. Yeah. And so Chet Flippo, I read this in another book, said that Fun in Acapulco was another of the worthless movies that honestly began to drain Elvis' self-confidence. Womp womp.
Womp womp. But then after that one, so we're moving on to Kissin Cousins, which was released March 6, 1964. This one was directed by Gene Nelson. The production company and distribution company for this were Four Leaf Productions and MGM. The cast included Arthur O'Connell, Glenda Farrell, Jack Albertson, Pamela Austin, and then Cynthia Pepper.
And the log line is a singing military officer gets mixed up with his look-alike hillbilly cousin. So I think in my head, this one and Double Trouble were mixed because I really thought Double Trouble had twins, because why is it called Double Trouble? And also the picture is two of Elvis.
Yeah.
So I mean, I knew this one had twins, but also Double Trouble was giving me that they were twins. I don't really know. Or I guess they're not twins in this movie, but just anyway.
They're not twins. They're just cousins.
So Corporal Josh Morgan, who's played by Elvis, is dispatched to Tennessee to convince his estranged cousins to sell their land to the government. It's giving maybe Follow That Dream a little bit, and it's making fun of the South. And when I wrote that, I said, they're using him to poke fun at the whole South from the Elvis movie. You know, you're losing your South movie. So that was
one of our favorite lines. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anywho, continuing with the plot. So okay, he gets into Tennessee. Guess what? He's got a lookalike cousin. So that's where this comes in. Elvis's character again. Elvis is Josh. The black-haired character is Josh, and then Elvis's blonde-haired character is Jody Tatum, the blonde hillbilly. So Elvis was a twin, and it's also Southern, making, you know, just making fun of the whole thing. It's kind of a little bit of a cringeworthy situation.
Yeah, it's like that as well. Fun. It's making fun of like the South and Southern culture. I feel like and then like cousins, like hillbillies. He has a sort of twin aspect when in real life he had a twin who died. Like, it's just very weird. And
it is. I feel like I'm always wondering now, like, was Elvis self-conscious about making this film because it's supposed to take place in Tennessee, the South?
Yeah, and it's like, oh, look at these hillbilly freaks.
Yeah,
and then he also like kind of has these two cousins. They're like third cousins, but they want his affection. So like again,
share the same great father.
I don't know. So many of his movies have cousins falling in love with him. It's like weird.
Again, I think where it often comes in the making fun of the South kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're at the two cousins that are kind of the love interest. Weird.
And then Jody, who's the blonde Elvis, finds in love.
Of course.
Josh, who's the black-haired Elvis, persuades. His name is Pappy Tatum, which also is like, I don't even want to unpack all that right now. It's too much. Yeah. So black-haired Elvis persuades Pappy Tatum to rent the land as long as there's like a road built, and then the military is gonna like look out for him and watch out from the government, so Pappy can still make his moonshine. Because
don't worry,
that's all they do. That's all they do in Tennessee. They've never done anything else ever.
And then we put plot ? What plot?
Yeah,
there wasn't a whole lot there. The plot is very, and that's why I feel like our notes are very thin, because there wasn't a whole lot of plot. There was just a lot of like things like B plot, subplots thrown in the whole thing. The main plot wasn't very heavy. So literally, Tessa's quote here is literally what is going on in this movie. It's embarrassing, and why did he have to make it? It's so bad.
Yeah. It's like the twin thing, the South, the blonde hair.
It's too much.
It's really bad. And like, I think I've said before that the movie that made me stop watching Elvis movies was Easy Come, Easy Go, the yoga scene specifically. Like I've just watched the Elvis movie in 2022, and then I was like, oh, I'll watch all his movies, and I was like, I can't. So anyway, this is one of those movies that I'm like, I'm glad I didn't watch this, because I think like back then I don't think I could have taken it. I just really don't think I could have.
Well, don't worry, we'll get to more later.
Yeah.
Anyhow, some themes for the film. I feel like they're kind of basic. We have family and loyalty, so obviously the whole cousin thing, can say his family, which is, it lends itself weirdly to the plot still. still talking about how family is kind of important, like those close ties, close connections. Again, so weird with the plot. It's giving a little bit random. It's giving making fun of the South still because again, how close the family ties are, and also being a movie about love interest.
It's just bad.
It's no.
So okay, moving on.
It needs to be on
from this no plot movie. Okay, so some behind the scenes stuff. So Alana Nash writes in her book, I believe this one was from Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. She wrote, "It didn't matter the quality of director, cameraman, or film editor. Everything was going to look dated anyway. As such, the budget got skimpier, $800,000 for Kissin Cousins compared with $4 million for Blue to White to allow a bigger profit." And so we start kind of seeing this around this point of that the movies are like being made cheaply, quickly, and like bad. Because they just knew that the only sure thing in Hollywood is the Elvis Presley picture, like, and you really see that at this point.
It's almost like, again, very similar plots. It's just girls, different location, and I think that's what they did. And then it's not just like the quality of the film; it was also like I feel like the quality of the soundtrack was decreasing. We have this quote from Maury Lacker. He said, "It really irked me because Elvis never should have had a slump. And the only reason he did was because of the terrible songs and the production, both in Hollywood and Nashville. Today, Nashville is a different ballgame. But back in the 60s, it was still real down-home country, and they played what I called shit-kicking music that might have been perfect for the Kissin Cousins soundtrack. But it was not Elvis Presley. Elvis could sing good country songs when he was allowed to, and he did later. But the crap that he'd been given to record so far was terrible. That's one reason I was keeping my fingers crossed for this television special, because with a string of shitty movies and records that didn't really satisfy anybody, a flop with the TV special might have finished off his career. This was his moment of truth, and it could have gone either way."
Yeah, so this later. Talking about the 68 special, but I thought it was interesting how he's talking about like the soundtracks are just not good, and how like once we get to the 68 special, like how important that was for his career. I love the 68 special.
I know you do.
That is my band. But it's just interesting that like it was from kind of early on in the 60s. Like this is 63 when this movie, or 64, or 64 when this movie came out, and like the songs are bad.
We're bad. And I think a lot of that had to do with that was just an extension of the movies. It was another moneymaker for them. And I feel like that's why there's so many, which we'll probably get into when we talk about Double Trouble. Watched that one recently together. Is because they were just putting random songs in there just to get like a full-length soundtrack.
Yeah.
And for almost every single film, there's a soundtrack. And Elvis Presley's face on it. You're going to want it. So let's just put a bunch of random songs. It doesn't matter the quality. Just get it out there.
Yeah. And some more behind the scenes. So Priscilla also was accompanying him on the set. But let me tell you, according to Alana Nash, this did not stop Elvis from pursuing other ladies.
No.
So the length of the shoot for Kissin Cousins was 17 days. Literally, it's crazy. Like super short, fast, like 2 weeks turnaround. And apparently during this time, he courted 5 different women. Little, womanizer. So Anne Margaret, Yvonne Craig, Cynthia Pepper, Priscilla, and Gail Ganley were the names that she said. So it's just moving quick, I guess.
Yep. And then just as a side note, that blonde wig, not his favorite.
He hated it.
Poor guy.
Ugh.
I know. Just thinking about it. All right. So the reception of the film. We just gave you our opinion, so we're going to talk a little bit about what they thought of it back in the day. Tessa, take it away.
Okay, so Variety, March 4th, 1964, wrote, "This new Elvis Presley concoction is a pretty dreary effort, one that certainly won't replenish the popularity of Sir Swivel. I kind of love that. That's
I do too.
okay. Then it says Presley needs and merits more substantial material than this if his career is going to continue to flourish as in the past. A few more like this, and Colonel Parker may have to press the panic button. Fair enough.
Very true. And then same article continues to say, presumably Metro was counting heavily on the support of royalties to bring home the box office bacon. The ammunition is Elvis in a dual role, a bunch of songs, a backwoods setting, and a bevy of decorative young females in a minimum of wardrobe. But production, Sam Katzman and Sav have forgotten several little things like a well-developed storyline and characterizations that at least remotely relate to life. Without these vital ingredients, Kissin Cousins is a commercial long shot, city or country. They didn't sugarcoat those.
No, it was bad. So
It was bad.
fair enough. And
But
like, are there any songs in it that I even care to hear? I don't even know. I can't remember. Let me look.
obviously we have the title track, Kissin Cousins.
Oh my gosh, there's so many songs.
I told you they had to sandwich in enough songs to get that full length LP.
But none of them are really calling to me.
Mhm.
Anyone Could Fall in Love with You. I feel like I've heard that one, and that was okay, but it's not exactly good.
No.
All right, so moving on to Viva Las Vegas, which came out May 20th, 1964, was directed by George Sidney, produced and distributed by Jack Cummings Productions and MGM. It included the cast of Anne Margaret, Cesar de Nova, William Demarest, Nikki Blair, and Elvis Presley.
Of course.
Yeah.
So our logline for this one is a race car driver falls for a pretty swimming instructor who wants him to slow down his career.
Dang. So Elvis plays Lucky Jackson, who is a race car driver who arrives in Las Vegas with hopes of earning enough money to enter the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But he gets sidetracked.
Of course he does. And he gets sidetracked kind of none other than the pretty woman, Anne Margaret.
Who her name is Rusty because she's got red hair.
Yeah. Anywho. So Lucky becomes sidetracked, we said this, by Rusty and Lucky and Rusty, obviously. It's an Elvis movie. So they're falling for each other. They're like, okay, like lovers kind of situation. And something has to throw a wrench in the plot. Classic. No pun intended. So Lucky's car breaks down just before the race. Womp womp.
And Rusty is caught between her feelings for Lucky and also the reality that their lives are like different because she wants financial security. Who can blame her? But he's like a race car driver following that dream, if you will. But then she's like, oh, it's fine. And we can be together. Yay. And she helps him with the car because she's a real woman.
She's real supportive there. And then don't worry, Lucky, he wins the race.
Yay.
He's all magical. It's because he had Anne Margaret, I guess. And now he had Rusty on his side and there was like a wedding. The end.
Yeah, the end.
Yeah.
So, okay. I jumped. This movie doesn't really make a lot of sense when you really break it down. Like, there's no plot. Really. I know it's so iconic, and it's like the song "Viva Las Vegas." Like,
what's the song?
And then Anne Margaret. Like, it's good. But the movie itself, if we think about it in a plot standpoint, it like doesn't make sense.
I think it's the imagery and the songs together that I think people are thinking is very iconic.
And the association of Elvis with Vegas, I think.
Yeah.
Also.
Even I think it's the 60s. Anne Margaret was at her height. So I think that lends to also Anne Margaret and Elvis together, I think kind of lends for an iconic duo.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything about the plot or the storyline that lends itself to be an iconic movie.
Yeah, it's them. It's not the movie.
Correct.
Yeah. So some of the themes, guess what? We got love. That's kind of it. romance. Love is a motivator. They're from different worlds, but don't worry, they got it. They'll figure it out. They've got it. They've got it down pat.
Yeah. And obviously this is one songs. There's good songs. Obviously, the love and romance is going to be one when you have Anne Margaret and Elvis together. They obviously had some chemistry there.
I mean, we'll get into that in the behind the scenes. My goodness. So my favorite Elvis song is I Need Somebody to Lean On. And it is in this movie so randomly and like it doesn't even really make sense. I don't know why. It's because they're going through it. I guess they're fighting or something, and then he sings it. And again, it's released like later. I don't think whatever. So, and it's my favorite song, but it doesn't really fit in the movie. I don't know.
Okay, but to the good stuff, the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, here's the tea.
I know the tea. Please go. I'll let you start.
Okay, so this is from Alana Nash's book, Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. And she writes that in July 1963, Elvis began filming Viva Las Vegas with a Swedish-born actress, singer, dancer, the press dubbed the female Elvis. Discovered by comedian George Burns in Las Vegas in 1960, 22-year-old Anna Margaret Olson had made only 3 other films: State Fair, A Pocket Full of Miracles, and the iconic Bye Bye Birdie. The latter is loosely based on the Elvis saga, but her combination of personal magnetism, hyper-femininity, flirtatious sensuality, and wholesome reserve had already made her the quintessential Hollywood sex kitten. Men would have died for her. One night before principal photography began, Elvis invited the red-haired actress to the Perugia Way house to get acquainted. The night before, he informed the guys that he wanted no one to accompany him when he went to pick her up. I bet. Furthermore, he expected the house to be empty when he returned. Yet this was different from Elvis's usual trysts with Hollywood starlets. In a photograph taken of the two of them at a birthday party for Anne Margaret's landlady, Elvis looks more emotionally vulnerable than in any other picture with a woman since those taken with his mother. Or whether Elvis was intrigued with Anne Margaret simply because she was his female counterpart, their obvious chemistry made Viva Las Vegas, another formulaic musical with simple-minded plot, one of Elvis's most memorable movies. So.
Also, I don't know if we included it. There was just first off, I need to see that picture that they're talking about.
I'll find it.
Find it? Okay. I think...
Is it the one where he's in her lap? No, it can't be that one.
He's in her lap?
Yeah, where he's resting his head in her lap.
I would hope that picture wouldn't be taken at a birthday party, but...
No.
I don't think so. Anywho, talking about... They obviously had some kind of chemistry talking about this photo, and I think that's why the film did so well, because people wanted to patronize it, because they wanted to see these two on screen together. But we have more from Marty Lacker talking about the romance of Elvis and Anne Margaret. He said they started shooting the picture in Hollywood first, and then they went to Vegas for location shots. Elvis stayed in Milton Pearl's suite at the Sahara, and he and Anne holed up in there for the whole weekend. No one ever saw them. Thank you for that. That drove Red and Lamar absolutely crazy. They tried to get them to come out, but nothing doing. Elvis wouldn't even answer the door for room service. They had to leave the food tray outside. Then when Elvis made sure everybody was away, he'd pull it in. So to play a trick on them, Red and Lamar stuffed newspaper under the door and lit it. They just aggravated the shit out of them. This is pretty childlike. But they even shined butter knives till they looked like mirrors, and then they slipped them under the door to see if they could see Anne without her clothes on. They tried everything, but Elvis and Anne would not come out of that suite. I think their episodes were a lot different from the kind that Elvis had with other girls. And so what? Neither one of them was married, and they really cared a lot about each other. She was a pretty strong person, and she was the first girl in a good while that he felt really connected with. Anne's as smart as a whip, and she adored him. And Priscilla was back at Graceland. We have so much information, I feel like, about the two of them. I will say one that we did not include, but I can just brief over real quick, is the whole the story that George Klein told about when Elvis brought Anne Margaret to I think it was the Perugia Way house, and like they were just like in the living room. There was like a curtain, I guess, and then all the guys are just like all stacked there, just like trying to get a peek at her.
I know, I can't. And then like
Peeping Toms.
Just these peeping toms, and then they're shining butter knives. Okay,
Oh my
creepers.
gosh.
My goodness. And then Elvis's cousin Billy Smith says that Elvis and Anne had a lot in common. For example, she could ride a motorcycle and she enjoyed being out on one. She was in the music business to a certain degree, and she was an actor with a hot career. She also had an ego like he did. And then Marty kind of adds to that and says, I think the fact that they were so similar is why they understood each other, but they were also very sensual people. Whoa.
And then Lamar Figeven says, very seldom would Elvis ever go anywhere by himself, but he'd go out alone with Anne. It used to rattle all of us. We'd give him a bunch of money and he'd jump in that Rolls Royce and stay gone. Nobody knew where he was except that he was with her. It blew our minds.
I mean, if you think about like how often the Memphis Mafia was like around him when anything was happening, and that like if he and Anne Margaret were just like alone, it's crazy. Yeah.
When you said alone,
just saying. And then Billy Smith said, there's no doubt that Elvis was in love with Anne Margaret, but he would have remembered the advice his mama gave him, which was don't marry anybody in the business. Your careers will clash. And then Marty Lacker said, there's a simpler explanation. He didn't want to look up on a movie screen and see her in bed kissing somebody. He couldn't have handled it.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting, like the old fashioned value too of like not wanting a career woman. My opinion of the Elvis and Anne thing is that like they would have been good together, but I think he wasn't like ready for all that.
Honestly, I don't know if he could ever have been ready for all that.
I agree. I think she would have challenged him to the point that it was like he didn't really want to be challenged. Like no, even if it was good for him, you know, like
agreed.
He didn't want that. So
and then we got our last quote, just a little bit behind the scenes. This one is from also Alana Nash's book, Baby Let's Play House. She says, Elvis Presley, I like you to meet a wonderful young lady, Anne Margaret, the director said. Anne Margaret, this is Elvis Presley. Simultaneously, the two stars started to say, I've heard a lot about you, then stopped in mid-sentence and broke into nervous laughter. They were both dressed like young professionals, she in a white knit double-breasted jacket and A-line skirt, and he in a suit and tie. Their conversation appearance hid the fact that they both shared a devil within. She would later write, we were quiet, polite, and careful. Anne Margaret remembered in her autobiography, my story, but I knew that was going to happen. My story, that was her autobiography. Yeah. But I knew what was going to happen once we got to know each other. Elvis did too. We both felt a current that went straight through us. It would become a force that we couldn't control. Anne Margaret was the female Elvis, all beauty, sex, and talent. She spoke in a breathy, morning after voice that managed to sound real and projected a paradox of Midwestern reserve and raw sensuality. Men would have died for her. Back to that. But I think their appearances, and they said this before, that their appearances kind of clashed during the filming of this. Kind of, we got a male director, and Margaret's there. It'd taken a little bit.
His camera is like,
right on. That's what I want.
Yeah. So then the Colonel is like, girl,
no,
like, hello.
Yeah.
I think this one's really interesting, more not for the plot, but for the behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really the pivotal moment, I think, in like the movie making and also his life and like what he wanted from his career. And I find it super interesting. So the New York Times said that in May 1964 said, Viva Las Vegas, the new Elvis Presley vehicle, is about as pleasant and unimportant as a banana split, and as fetching a look at it might be added. But now, after some rocky beginnings, the Presley movie formula has leveled off to a series of musical romps that are extremely easy to take, and where our boy Elvis once stumbled, he now ambles along personably. Not only does he sing better, at least more audibly, but the tunes also continue to improve.
They did for this film. I think that was the exception. Variety, this is also from May 1964. Beyond several flashy musical numbers, a glamorous locale, and one electrifying auto race sequence, the production is a pretty trite and heavy-handed affair.
Yeah.
Literally.
And I thought it was really interesting. It's not literally. I think it was really interesting. So a lot of Nash highlights that Viva Las Vegas was an immediate hit, topping Blue Hawaii's Elvis's highest grossing film ever. By 1969, revenues reached 5.5 million. And usually an Elvis movie would gross about 3 million. So I guess the behind the scenes of it all, and the Anne Margaret, she's just so fabulous. Like the Anne Margaret, the Elvis, it was like no one really cared what they were doing, really.
No.
They just wanted to see that together.
Exactly. I mean, wouldn't if you were there in the 1960s, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Like they're beautiful people. Like
both, and it's got something for both men and women, you know.
Yeah, it's like for the girlies, for the guys.
There you go.
There's some songs maybe for whatever, and there's some interesting outfits.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's plot wise not there, but lore wise, like for the plot,
yeah,
for the plot, it was good.
It was good. Okay. All right. Next one, final one for this episode, we have Roustabout, which was released November 10th, 1964. It was directed by John Rich. The production and distribution company for this was Hal Walls Productions and Paramount Pictures. Cast included Barbara Stanwyck, Joan Freeman, Leif Erikson, Soon, and Langdon. And I feel like this was a bigger deal because Elvis did get to work with Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah. And so the log line is the female carnival owner hires a hot-blooded young singer to save her touring show. Okay. He's a singer. What? That's crazy.
Whoa, really?
So Charlie Rogers, who is played by Elvis, is a motorcycle riding drifter. And he's literally just a roustabout, roaming from town to town. So true.
Thank you for quoting those lyrics.
I have to say.
Okay. So Charlie, we told you he's a singer. He gets fired, which is, okay, a little annoying. But then he ends up working for a carnival owned by Maggie Morgan, which is played by Barbara Stanwyck.
Okay. So the carnival of it all, it's giving Colonel the Snowman, Elvis the Showman.
Oh, 100%.
That whole scene from the Elvis movie where they're at the carnival and it's like, Snowman's coming. Just like the whole scene is in my head while I'm watching this movie. And I felt that maybe there was some like underhanded, a sleight of hand moment.
From the technical supervisor, would you say?
Technical advisor, yeah.
Technical advisor. I'm sorry, excuse me.
No, it's okay. It's just interesting. Anyway.
For anybody who didn't get the reference, I was the Colonel.
Oh, yeah, the Colonel, sorry.
Yeah. Just in case. So again, talking about this plot, Maggie recognizes Charlie's musical talents and promotes him to feature attraction, okay, Elvis real life kind of situation. Charlie romances Kathy.
Who's like the daughter? Isn't she the daughter? I think she's the daughter of Barbara Stanwyck. I don't really know. And there's also like a rival carnival guy, and then the Elvis character goes to work for him, but then he's like, oh, wait, this guy's kind of evil. Let me like go back to this nice carnival where everyone's cool. And also there is that pretty girl.
Woo.
Woo.
The end. Kind of.
Pretty much.
He gets back.
There's also a love triangle. Maybe.
What is there not at this rate?
Always.
But anyway, then we got a couple themes. Not a whole lot of theme going on, but talking about being a roustabout. Tessa thinks is a very fun word to say.
So fun. And I want to use it in my day-to-day.
How would you do that, though?
Love it. No, I mean, it just depends. It's when you come upon a roustabout, then you will know.
Do you do that on a regular basis?
Anything can happen.
Okay. Well, then it's also about, carnival people, and carnival people, okay, it's giving, underhanded slight at the Colonel, that was a
Yeah.
Colonel thing, the Carnival. Obviously there's love because it's not an Elvis movie without a love or love triangle. And then there's Independence of Rebellion, which I think is thinking a little bit deeper at the Elvis movies.
Yeah. Classic. I mean, there's always rebellion, Elvis the Rebel. To be honest, I kind of liked this movie. It's cute, I guess.
Cute. That's cute.
I mean, yeah, it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would watch it again for entertainment. So,
okay. Well, we got some more behind the scenes. And again, the behind the scenes stuff at this point is really what you're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Versus the actual plot, I guess you could say. So we got some behind the scenes stuff from Alana Nash's book, Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. In this book, Marty Lacker apparently says that Ursula Andress, from Margarita from Fun in Acapulco, she used to come on the set and visit Elvis. Interesting. I don't know if he said anything else about what was going on, but
she visited him. And then Lamar says that it isn't fair to say Elvis hated all the pictures. He liked Roustabout because he got to work with Barbara Stanwyck and she helped him as an actor.
Fair enough.
But also, so he loved Barbara Stanwyck, but also then Marty talks about him clashing with the director.
Yikes. So this quote, it's not really a quote, I guess it's more of a rundown. Would you like to take this one away?
It is a quote. No, you can do it.
Okay. So this is from Marty. One of the few times Elvis really clashed with one of his directors was on Roustabouts. Elvis had some kind of virus and 104-degree fever. He didn't feel like sitting up, much less making a movie. Who could blame the guy? Just gonna throw that out there. But the director, John Rich, was a no-good bastard, and the fact that Elvis was sick didn't cut any ice with him. He kept making him do one particular scene over and over. Actually, it seemed like he was just pushing Elvis to see how far he could go. Elvis resented the hell out of it, but he'd just smile and do what Rich said. Usually when stuff like that happened, we play practical jokes on each other and on the cast and crew to make Elvis feel better. On Roustabout, we started doing stuff and John piped up, yelling not at Elvis, but at the guys. He said, if you don't stop that and shut up, you're going to have to leave the soundstage. And boy, Elvis came to life. He said, let me tell you something, Mr. Rich. When these fucking movies cease to be fun, just saying, I'll stop doing them. And if my guys go, God damn it, so do I.
Damn. So there's drama.
Whoa. He put on his big boy pants there. I just got to say that.
Yeah, if I had 104-degree fever and like my friends are just trying to make me laugh because I'm making this movie, which is number whatever of however many movies I've made,
which is putting money in your pocket.
Yeah, let me just have a moment, a little fun. And so then in the Baby Let's Play House book, I think Marty also says that, or no, I think this was just Alana Nash said, so that this is talking a little bit about the music that's in these movies. So she says, when he made movies, his late record producer, Felton Jarvis, said he'd have to sing to a cow or a dog or a kid because they were situation songs. They fit into the script. I remember him talking about the soundtrack to Roustabout. They were cutting the title song and he told the Jordanaires, fellas, sing along with me on the chorus. And the director, Elvis's op, ran out and said, Elvis, I don't think you understand where the song's going to be in the picture. You're riding down the highway on a motorcycle singing. If the Jordanaires are singing too, where are they supposed to be? And Elvis said, the same damn place the band is. In Roustabout, Sue Ann Langdon likes the fortune teller of Madame Michenou and recalls that she almost passed on the film because doing an Elvis movie at that time was not such a sensational thing to do. She acquiesced mainly because she'd always wanted to work with Barbara Stanwyck. Nonetheless, she enjoyed her kissing scenes with Elvis. His lips were very, very soft, and recalls he giggled through most of them. Around the set, he called her Madame for her character. He thought that was so funny, she said. So I do think it's interesting that like the music part is what I liked, that that he's like, girl, well, I'm on the highway, like there's a band, it's just me and my guitar and I'm singing. Like we have to suspend reality for a moment.
It's Hollywood.
We can't like be in all the nitty gritty. Like, let me sing the songs to Joan Baez, please.
I mean, because he's kind of right. If, the band can be there,
Right.
the Jordanaires can too. We also have more direct from members of the Memphis Mafia, the inner circle. So we have this from Larry Geller. It was talking about during the making of the movie. He said several weeks had elapsed since the start of filming, and Elvis's hair needed to be dyed and styled to match the way it looked in the completed scene. He had been dyeing his normally sandy brown hair jet black for many years because he believed that black hair gave him a stronger appearance and brought out his eyes. For the next half hour, I trimmed his hair as I worked, occasionally glancing at Elvis' reflection in the mirror. He sat quietly watching me, concentrating on something, his steel blue eyes following my every move. The interesting thing about Elvis was that, unlike most famous people, he looked and moved and spoke exactly as he did on television and in movies. It stuck to me that Elvis didn't develop an image for public consumption or some levels. He was his image. On the other hand, his low-key manner and friendly demeanor seemed incongruous, as if he were trying to tell you, yes, he was Elvis Presley, but he was someone else too. Over the years, I would come to see how wide a line divided the public Elvis, the man we all thought we knew, from the private Elvis, the man he wanted us all to understand.
I just liked that because it was like talking about, so Elvis and Larry met. Larry Geller, who was his hairstylist for many years, and was the member of the inner circle. They met on the set of this Roustabout, which is, it's not bad, it's not good, it's just kind of like, okay, it's not exactly like a revolutionary picture, and that Elvis was searching for something more. He always wanted to be a real actor and always wanted to have, the opportunity to do that, and he just never really got that chance. And so I think it is interesting that they met in this time, and Larry was very integral to Elvis's spiritual journey and spiritual understanding. And so I do think it's kind of interesting that they met in this time when he was so
when the movies,
the movies were not fulfilling him in the way that he wanted them to. So.
Yeah, and which I feel like lended itself to his greater life search.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And then, so now we're finishing off with some of the critiques of the film back in the day. The first one we have is from the New York Times in November of 1964. Elvis Presley starred Roustabout is a gaudy stage, tritely scripted film looming as a box office smash based on not lore, but they said lure, Elvis Presley name and co-billing of Barbara Stanwyck, an expensive quality of Technicolor Techniscope frame provided for 11 Presley songs.
Yep. And Variety in November 1964 said Presley singing for losing customers and prosperity, but he deserts to another show after a fight with the Leif Erikson character, misunderstanding with Joan Freeman. Involved is lost wallet, for which Presley is blamed, dark-haired Van, who pants after Presley, an ever-present filmy spirit of carny camaraderie. Almost too inane to consider is showdown fight between Presley and Erikson in the musical finale with enemies and friends smiling happily. So I would say out of the four, the one I liked the most, just movie-wise, is Roustabout.
Really?
Out of that four. And then I would say that for the plot of Elvis's life, not the plot of the movie, I would say Viva Las Vegas.
We're gonna get on board with that. Because I don't want to think, I'm like, that's no offense to the films or the plots or anything, but if I want to just sit and just watch Elvis Presley from this time period, I would probably choose to watch Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Just because the imagery is very iconic. The songs are much better, but if I'm wanting to watch a better film for the storyline, I would probably go with Roustabout.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was entertaining. It was entertaining.
It's not Barbara Stanwyck.
I didn't turn it off. It was good-ish. But I feel like with some of these, you have to really change your I was talking to someone earlier saying that like it's hard to separate. Yeah, it's hard to separate too, like when you know a lot about Elvis and what like was going on in his actual life, not like on screen during this time, just the struggles that he was going through, that it's hard sometimes to separate the movies from that. So sometimes I'll just watch the movie and I know that he hated making it. And so I don't really care for it that much.
Yeah, you don't want his experiences to personally sway how you feel about the film.
Yeah, but they kind of do every time.
They do, like, because
at this point,
I think at this point we've read so much about his personal life. Again, the book club girly here. I read so many books. So do you. I think we know a lot, and it's kind of hard for us to separate. And so when we see a certain song, and for you especially, where you say that you can hear when he's into a song, it's like you might see him, he might be happy in the role when he's singing, but when you actually listen to it, it's like, okay, he didn't enjoy this.
Right. Like he wasn't it's hard to watch someone who is like so talented have to do things that are not really up to par with the talent that he had, or like thought. I think as an actor, like in the very beginning of the better movies, he like wasn't quite like ready yet as an actor. I think he could have learned if he'd had the opportunity to do better quality movies in the 60s. And so it's kind of, you see his frustration, I think, with the soundtracks and the acting and the quality of the plot. Like you can sense it if you like, it's almost like I wish I'd watched them all before I knew everything.
But I think you're also then in the boat where you have to be like, okay, I can't compare these to like, I don't know, like a Ben-Hur. Like you can't compare it to like that style of movie. You have to kind of compare them to other Elvis pictures.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. But I think we did a good choice here. Made a good choice.
Oh goodness, what are our next four? I'm scared.
Let's see. I got them in front of me.
The sound you just did it all.
We're not. Okay. The next four that we're going to be covering are Girl Happy, Tickle Me, Harem Scarum, and Frankie and Johnny. Now, Girl Happy.
I've seen Girl Happy.
Girl Happy is good.
Pretty
good. I do like that one. Our friend Tara said Tickle Me is kind of like a Scooby-Doo-esque movie. So I disappeared into
Scarlet today. No, Scarlet today was like, it's like Scooby-Doo. Like she said that to me. I was like,
so if you like Scooby-Doo, you don't like that one.
Let's Scooby-Doo.
Great.
But
you'll be fine.
Enough. Hair Scare, I think that that's going to be something.
Frankie and Johnny is it's an iffy one too, I think. Okay.
All right.
Brace yourself.
That's all we're going to do. Oh gosh, I'm bracing.
That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Chronicles of the King podcast.
If you love what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps bring the King's story to life.
You can follow us on social media at the Chronicles of the King for updates, upcoming series, and more. We'd love to hear your input and any of your favorite Elvis moments.
Until next time, keep rocking and rolling, and we'll be back soon with more stories from Elvis's extraordinary life.
With TLC, we'll see you on the next episode of the Chronicles of the King.